We know.
You just said move E.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Right.
On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Clark, my fellow commissioners, Manager Madrid, and staff, I'd like to welcome everybody here to this regular meeting of Wednesday, March 27th, 2019. It is now 9 a.m. I will now call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Here.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Ralph Keshler.
Here.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Here.
Honorable George Cicchetti.
Here.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda this morning is item B2, silent meditation. Please join me in 15 seconds of silent meditation. Thank you. The next item on our agenda this morning is item B3, the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Hischler, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item this morning is item B4, the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
You have changes, Mayor? Yes. In the order?
Yes, I do. I'd like to move item E, presentations, to right above item C.
Mayor Whitehead, I'd like to move that we move item E under presentations to right above item number C, comments from the public.
Thank you.
And I'll make a motion to approve that agenda.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda, moving item E, presentations, right above item C. Are there any further discussions, comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, our item on the agenda is item E, presentations. It is my great privilege, pride, honor, excitement to present this proclamation on behalf of the City of Truth or Consequences, Mayor Pro Tem Clark, Commissioner Ralph Keshler, Commissioner Paul Baca, Commissioner George Cicchetti, Manager Morris Madrid, staff, and the community. I will now read the proclamation. City of Truth or Consequences proclamation honoring the Hot Springs High School Tigers varsity boys basketball team as the 2019 state champions. Whereas this year, the Hot Springs High School varsity boys basketball team in parentheses, won the first district championship since 2000. And whereas we are so honored to recognize the 13 dedicated team members led by 7 coaches and 3 managers for their accomplishment over the past few months and for their hard work, dedication, and love of the sport of basketball. And whereas on March 16, 2019, at high noon was a tip-off of the New Mexico State Championship game in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And whereas the team went from dead last to first place in 2 years, they were number 3. They were the number 3 seed in the whole tournament and also set the record for the most wins with 27 this season, according to the prior record showing 25 wins. And whereas these young men not only brought home the state championship for their school and served as ambassadors for Sierra County as they played throughout their season, but they won the 2019 state championship with a victory that will go down as one of the greatest moments in Hot Springs High School history. And whereas this is the first 3A state championship in the school history, others were when they were a 2A school, including the last time they went in 1994, where they were runner-up, and in 1993, was the last time they won the state championship. And whereas head coach Derek Bean and the entire coaching staff, managers, team, parents, faculty, and student body at Hot Springs High School were integral in guiding the team to victory through their unwavering support. Now, therefore, I, Sandra Whitehead, Mayor, on behalf of the City of Truth or Consequences City Commission in Sierra County, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim March 16, 2019 as HSHS Tigers 2019 State Champions Day in Truth or Consequences, and encourage all citizens to also show their Tiger pride and join us in celebrating and honoring the team as well as the coaches and managers for their outstanding accomplishment. Signed by myself, Sandra Whitehead, as mayor, and our city clerk, Renee Canton. I am really proud, happy, and I know that each and every one of you are excited to this day. I know it's been a thrilling year, a thrilling season, and I know that that thrill is still in your hearts. And Derek Bean, I am very, very, very proud of you. Congratulations. At this time, we have a proclamation for each and every one of you, so I'm going to come to the front. Our clerk, Renee Canton, is going to read the names. I would like each and every one of you to come down and receive your own proclamation in honor of the City of Truth or Consequences and you as champions for 2019.
Coach Derek Bean. And the coach has a few extra to hang up around the school. Michael Ortiz. Miguel Regalado. Tino Luna. Colton Whitehead.
Are you guys related?
Looks like.
James Childress. Abel Radian. Juan Avalos. Veryl Lukman. Nathan Salcido.
You know what's interesting too is it's not wasn't so long ago, I remember some of these little guys walking down the river coming fishing, and I think they're not going to go like,
Cameron Zamora. Aljon Panilli. Kevin McClintock. Brandon Gossett. Coach Jake Morales. Coach Philip Zuni. Coach Mike Poche. Coach Saul Baquera. Coach Garrett Stockton. Coach Monty Mitchell.
They all have real jobs.
Correct. Manager Alex Carter. Manager Rudy Trejo. And Manager Jaden Von Gersman.
Everyone together. Come on.
Tall guy. Right behind you. I like it. We got the same problem over here. Basketball player, your toes wrong.
I'm not used to this.
All right, one more time. Congratulations.
I didn't think. Nice job, guys. Really nice
Good
job.
job, guys. That's the my Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations. Great job. Great job. Great job. Congratulations, coach. Excellent job. Congratulations. Congratulations, real job. Congratulations. I'm gonna go look for a real job. Good job, coach.
Coach, let me know if any of this.
Thank you all so much.
Great job,
Thank
coach.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you guys. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good luck. Congratulations. All right.
Can we adjourn?
Can we adjourn? All right, back to business. The next item on our agenda is item C, comments from the public. Again, remember the 3-minute rule. Once you approach the podium, give your name and your address. If you have any documentation that needs to be given to the commission, please put it in the little black box next to the podium. Do I have any public comment at this moment? Public comment, come on down.
Yeah, my name's Lee Wedgwood at 106 Michigan, and that's Williamsburg. So I just wanted to talk about a few things that are just really wrong with this council. First of all, let me just give you a little story of my life lately. I got this lady friend of mine. She's with me all the time. She likes to take my money and eat up a lot of my time. If I don't give her my money or my time, she's going to kill me. What's her name? Anybody? Her name is cancer. So, anyway, I'm a victim of cancer. Not by choice. I've been doing everything I can to counteract that. Since it's eaten all my money, I've been experimenting with solar electricity. Okay, first of all, I built myself a little 4-panel unit, charged up batteries. I was running my equipment out of the garage, air compressor, saw, drills, things like that. Worked good. And a good buddy of mine that I was a mentor to, who is now working with a construction company that does work all over the country. So he was, aware of my situation. So he brings me a truckload of solar panels, some plug-in good tie inverters. So he says, I ain't got time to build it, but I'm providing it with you for all what you've done for me over the years. I met the guy when he was like 18. Taught him things of life, worth ethics, doing to others as you would like done to you. And it worked. He's now supervisor of that company, travels the country, making lots of bucks. So he just laid this stuff on me. He says, but you build it. So, okay, I build it. And that's not working so good. And experimenting with it. And so he leaves, I build it. So my meter, I finally get it to where it's running a little bit backwards. I got a negative 3 times since December. 8 cents, 29 cents, 56 cents. And, okay, about 6 months ago, Bo Dillis comes out there. He just stands there. I say, like that. He thinks he's Nebuchadnezzar. And I say, what's up? What's up? Hey, what's up? He doesn't say a thing. I go out there, and he says, there's an ordinance. You can't have solar panels. So, I go to the village.
Thank you, sir. It's been your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next time we'll finish the story.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Fenn, 316 North Fourth Street. Last time I was speaking of my trip to the spaceport, the latest meeting, and so I'm going to read my comment that I presented to the spaceport board. This is from their minutes. Ron Fenn. I was pleased to see Dan Hicks on television saying that tourism was no longer a major component of Spaceport America. I asked Spaceport America to do the right thing for Truth or Consequences and remove yourself from our building. I have done the analysis, and Spaceport America has earned $135 a month for the last 14 months. This is hardly anything to be proud of, considering the fair market rent for our building should be $19,000 a year, and we have gotten nothing. I have made a proposal to the city manager to lease the building myself and return it to the people of Truth or Consequences. I hope my offer will be accepted and we'll get back the building to the people. I hope you people will put your heads together and say it is time to move on and move out and find another space or move to Las Cruces. Now you have the Southern Road completed. I drove the Southern Road the other day. It's a very nice road. I wish we had nice roads in Tier C. But I would like to see whatever you do be related to space industry and leave tourism off the table. It is not a tourist attraction. With Virgin Galactic launches at 50,000 feet, people will not drive out to see that. People will only be able to see a pinpoint in the sky unless they're coming to see someone crash land. I ask for your support for my proposal to the city. That was on February 28th. Since then, I have also realized that having visited their new headquarters, that they are in violation of the terms of their original contract, which says that their office will be within 50 miles of the spaceport. Guess what? It's over 50 miles. It's 59 miles by road and 51.41 as the crow flies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anybody else for public comment this morning? Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is item D, response to public comment. Do I have any response to public comments this morning? Thank you. Hearing none, the next item on our agenda is item F, consent calendar. We have 4 items. F1, City Commission regular minutes, February 27th, 2019. F2, City Commission regular minutes, March 13th, 2019. F3, Public Utilities Advisory Board minutes, February 19, 2019. And F4, Golf Course Advisory Board minutes for February 6, 2019. Is there any item on here that needs to be pulled and talked about separately, or can we move to approve all of them at one time?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendars as proposed on the agenda.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar as noted, F1 through 4. Is there any further discussion, comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda this morning is item G, ordinance, resolutions, and zoning. G1, discussion action, resolution number 30, 2018-2019, approving the acceptance of fiscal year 2018 audit. We have Heather Lucero, Patillo, Brown, and Hill, LLP, and Manager Madrid. I'll turn this over to you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Heather Lucero. I'm an audit supervisor with Patillo, Brown, and Hill. We did the city's audit for fiscal year 18. This is the final presentation. The audit has been approved by the state auditor and has officially been released for public viewing, so it's now on the state auditor's website. So the first slide we have kind of goes over some of our basic responsibilities as far as auditors. So, you have the thing right there. Oh, sorry. Okay. So we'll start with the green box. So the green box essentially describes our overall responsibility as auditors. So our responsibility as the auditors is to come in, review the city's financial information, and then to express an opinion. We don't do anything above that. The city is responsible for all management decisions. They're responsible for internal control, for the fair presentation of the financials. We strictly come in for the purpose of expressing that opinion. The second box, the red box, talks about us providing reasonable, not absolute assurance. So for us to provide absolute assurance, we would have to come in and look at every transaction, which isn't cost, there's not a cost benefit to doing that, and it's not practical. So what we do is we come in and we sample a selection of transactions, we perform analytics, we compare prior year, current year, those types of activities. And because of that, we're able to get reasonable assurance, which means we can get a good feel for it, but we can't say absolutely that there wouldn't be an issue, because to do that, we would have to look at everything. The bottom box, the kind of teal colored box, talks about internal controls. So when we come out to do the audit, we don't express an opinion on internal controls. We simply come out and test the entity's internal controls in accordance with government auditing standards to make sure the city has controls in place, that those controls are operating effectively, and if we notice any deficiencies, so that we can present those to management and the commission so that corrective actions can be taken. And then finally, the last box talks about we're also responsible for letting the commission know if we find anything. So if we find significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, major issues, then we are responsible for letting the city manager know and letting the commission know that there's issues going on and that corrective action needs to be taken. Okay, so the next slide talks about the city's opinion. So I'm happy to say that for FY18, the city did receive what we call an unmodified or a clean opinion. That's the best opinion you can get. That's really what every agency, city, county should be shooting for, is a clean opinion, and happily the city did receive that in FY18. In addition to our opinion, there's 2 more reports that are included with the entire financial statement package. These reports are the GAGAS report on internal control, and then the second report is the report on compliance over major federal programs. That second report is our opinion on the city's federal programs. So since the city receives more than $750,000 from the federal government, they're required to have what's called a single audit. And when we do that single audit, we look at, is the city in compliance with the federal regulations with uniform guidance? And so I'm happy to say that for FY18, we also issued an unmodified or clean opinion over the city's federal programs. So our next slide talks about significant audit adjustments or any uncorrected adjustments. So these would be any major adjustments that we had to make to the financial statements. For FY18, the only significant adjustments we made were to change the books from a cash basis to an accrual basis. So DFA requires the city to report everything on a cash basis in all of their quarterly reports. And then, of course, at year-end, GAAP requires us to change everything into this accrual basis. And so for FY18, the significant adjustments that we posted were all due to those adjustments. So we're talking things like depreciation, getting the fixed assets on the financial statements, long-term debt, those types of items. And to our knowledge, there was no uncorrected misstatements for the FY18 audit. So our next slide talks about resolved prior year findings. So these are findings that were effective in FY17 that were cleaned up during FY18, and so this is the progress we want to see the city making. We want to see findings getting corrected and eventually coming off the report. So these are the 4 that came off of FY18's report. So we had some issues in 17 over payroll disbursements, some issues in 16 and 17 over travel and per diem, some issues in 16 and 17 over para, and then in 17 having a chief procurement officer. And so I'm happy to say those 4 findings were cleared in FY18, so they were not included on the FY18 report. The next slide is the findings that were included on the FY18 report. So the city had 6 findings in FY18. 3 of these are repeat findings from FY17, and 3 of these are new findings. That first finding, the controls over disbursements, that relates to the city's purchase orders. So while we were out here doing some testing, we identified a few issues where a purchase order wasn't generated, or it was generated after an invoice was received. And so per the city's policies, those purchase orders have to be generated before you actually go out and buy a product or get services completed, those types of things. We did talk to city management about if an emergency comes up, because that was one of the issues identified was, you know, what do we do if on the weekend a pipeline breaks and we have to go and get stuff? Well, we talked to them about the correct way to go ahead and get those purchases done without violating the city's internal control policies. The second item on there, controls surrounding cash receipts. these relate to the golf course. So the golf course has had an issue in FY18 of turning in their cash in a timely manner in accordance with the city's policies. And the other issue we identified was there was a lack of support for the dollar amounts that were being brought in. So we got to have some kind of backup showing if we're bringing $100, this is what makes up that $100. And that way the city knows all the cash is being accounted for. The third item, the bulk fuel, the city didn't have controls in place to correctly monitor their bulk fuel. So when we're making bulk fuel purchases, we'd like to make sure that the city has a good policy in place for measuring that bulk fuel and seeing, you know, how much gas have we actually used and when do we need to make a purchase. And then that can support the actual purchase being made. So right now, the only thing supporting the purchases was a PO, but there wasn't anything actually showing how much of that fuel was used, how did we account for that fuel that was used, and so that's where this finding was generated from. The third item, the cash management item, so this was a repeat from FY17. It was corrected in February of 18, however, since we audit the entire year, those issues from the beginning of the year were still in place, and then in February, corrective action was implemented, but those initial issues in the beginning is what triggered this repeat finding. If those controls have maintained through FY19, this one I believe should go away as long as the city has maintained those controls that were set in February of 18 over this cash management drawdowns. And that relates to your federal program. That's submitting reimbursement requests and getting the funding from the federal government. The next one, the retiree health care, when we test retiree health care, so state audit rule requires us to test 100% of retiree health care to make sure the city's properly accounting for all payroll. And when we tested it, we had one instance where an employee had retired and their final hours were calculated incorrectly. And because those hours were calculated incorrectly, the retiree health care was calculated based on those incorrect hours. This was corrected subsequently. However, we are the ones that noted the issue, and then once we noted it, the city did work with retiree health to get it fixed. Unfortunately, it still generates a finding. And then the last one is procurement, and this relates to the golf course contract. The city paid a significant amount last year for the golf course without an actual valid contract in place, and that's what triggered the final finding. So that's all I have, unless you have questions, comments. Yes.
I have a question. Well, I have three, actually. These findings, are they going to affect our ability to be our own fiscal agent, or are we going to have to put that out now?
No, they shouldn't affect your ability to be a fiscal agent as long as you can explain to DFA what your corrective actions are going to be, and you can prove to them that you're implementing those corrective actions. You shouldn't. The finding that typically triggers them to require a fiscal agent immediately has to do with capital assets. That tends to be the one where they just come in and say, nope, that's it. These ones, you probably will get a notice from them that says, hey, you have repeat findings. We want to know why. But as long as you can provide them information showing this is why it was a repeat finding, look, we've already implemented corrective action. And so for many of these, for example, the cash management, corrective action was implemented in FY18. It's just, it was implemented mid-year. So.
The second question is, my understanding is that DFA is looking at possibly letting municipalities go from a cash basis to an accrual basis. Do you know anything about that?
They are talking about that, and part of the reasoning behind that is because they're having a hard time with people converting everything at year end. So there has been talk about just having everybody switch over and you report accrual basis year round. So come year end, you don't have all these big entries and things that you've got to make to get it there. As far as I've last heard, they have not made an official decision on that.
Thank you. The last question is, I understand the golf course thing, and I appreciate some of the work that our commission has done to try to help with that. However, my question is this: when you sign a contract, even though the contract wasn't valid during your particular audit period, this contract gave responsibility to an outside person over whom the city really doesn't have control. So is it based on this contract that wasn't in place validly that you based this finding on about the cash receipts? Or is it something that even though this contract that wasn't valid is still valid in your eyes to make the finding for the cash receipts for the person that was an independent contractor?
So
Do you like that
unfortunately,
question?
that's a good one. Unfortunately, even though it's an independent contractor, since the funds ultimately belong to the city, so what that contractor is bringing in ultimately belongs to the city is still responsible for ensuring that that contractor is adhering to the city's policies. Now, the city's policy for the golf course could be, you know, he brings it in once a week and here's what he brings in. But the city still needs to make its best effort to ensure that contractor is following those rules. Because you kind of get into a muddy area otherwise where then you could see other vendors, other contractors who say, well, we're a vendor, we don't want to adhere. So because that money ultimately belongs to the city, even though it's coming from an outside vendor and they're bringing it in, you still have to make sure those controls are in place. And I know the golf course has kind of been a touchy subject because there's a lot more to it than just this cash management stuff going on. But I think as much as the city can try to kind of either maybe set policies for here's what we do for the golf course, and it fits better with the golf course, maybe what you have in place for other locations doesn't work with the golf course. Like maybe it's easier to oversee the swimming pool and, you know, 24 hours or 48 hours makes more sense, but maybe the golf course needs kind of its own set of policies. Then if that change needs to be made, then that's up to the city to do. But ultimately, unfortunately, I get where you're coming from. You know, it's a contractor, but the city still has some liability in there, and as such, we really still want to oversee
So
them.
I guess the conclusion on that one is that maybe it's not a good idea to have an independent contractor and have this person responsible for city's money. It's better to have an employee.
If you can have an employee working on it, you'll have more say
That was
than a
yes or no
contractor.
question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem. Do we have any further comments, questions, concerns?
Mayor Whitehead, if I may, thank you. Manager Madrid, I look at these, there's 6 findings, and I think 4 or several of these findings are being corrected or in the process of being corrected. Can you just give us a real quick report on where you are in the correction and what your plans are for those that have not been corrected?
Sure, Commissioner. Most of them have been corrected. In regard to cash receipts, as Heather said, those have been corrected. Those controls are still in place. I'll get down to the bulk fuel. We've implemented logs that record where the bulk fuel is dispersed by vehicle. Where we have G-plate numbers, we use those. If not, we use a description of the type of equipment to whatever is unique, and those are done every time the equipment or the vehicles are fueled. We also have a monthly report that we reconcile both the consumption and the amounts on a monthly basis for all the bulk fuel in all areas, because we have 2 areas that we do that. In the area of cash management, that control remains in place. We have reassigned some staff to make sure that those controls are strong. In retiree health care, we believe that was a single occurrence, but we do have procedures in place to make sure that when payroll is run within a reasonable amount of time, all the withholdings and deductions are forwarded to the proper agencies, like the federal withholding to IRS, to the PERA withholdings. We do have those controls in place now, and I've been reviewing those myself since I've been acting finance director. In procurement, we've actually made some additional controls because we had staff that were performing some procurement and some payment, and those segregation of duties seemed a little bit weak. So we've actually tightened those up. In regard to the golf course specifically, we have eliminated the contractor, taken over operations ourselves. We've implemented a daily reconciliation process where we develop a worksheet that shows the amount taken in by debit card, credit card, and cash Those amounts are reconciled to the daily cash summary. The daily cash summary is then reconciled to the bank statement. So we have those controls in place. We do not have anyone counting cash or preparing the reports by themselves. They are all witnessed and initialed by someone else. So those are some of the examples. I used to stand where she's standing a long time ago, so I understand the processes, and we would love to say that our audit will be completely clean. I think the one good thing that I will be in contact with DFA about in regard to this report is there were no material weaknesses. That's the key when it comes to determining whether you can be your own fiscal agent. So I think we can make a good case for being our own fiscal agent from here forward, and I think our staff is fully capable of that. And we continue to look for a competent finance director.
Thank you, Commissioner Hester, and thank you, Manager Madrid. Do we have any further questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, I stand for a motion.
I'll make that motion. Make the motion to accept it. We do it on a resolution, Mayor?
Yes,
Resolution 2019, approving the acceptance of the fiscal year 2018 audit as presented by Ms. Lucero. Ms. Lucero, correct?
Yes.
Okay. From Hill LLP and from Mr. Madrid, City Manager.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 30, 2018-2019, approving the acceptance of fiscal year 2018 audit as presented by Heather Lucero. Do we have any further questions, comments, concerns, questions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Deschler.
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Yes.
Honorable George Zaghetti.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Lucero. The next item on our agenda this morning is item G2, discussion action resolution number 31, 2018-2019, designating signatory authority for submission of applications and related documentation for USDA. Tracy Burnett, our grant projects coordinator and building official.
Zoning official. Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, Manager Madrid. So this is just kind of a housekeeping resolution. USDA does request a resolution that designates signatory authority within our municipality, and I am requesting that Mr. Madrid be our signatory authority with City Clerk Renee Canton as an alternate when he's not available. This is for submission of upcoming applications, whether it be for the application we're currently preparing for is our very large water application for the downtown lines and Cook Street, but also I'm starting to meet with different departments and look again at some of their equipment grant or needs, so we can look at applying for some more equipment since we've been successful. And as you guys know, there's a lot of paperwork involved with USDA, so we just need that easy signatory authority. With that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns? Manager Madrid?
Recommend your approval, Mayor.
Thank you. I stand for a motion to approve resolution number 31, 2018-2019.
Mayor Whitehead, I'd like to move that we approve resolution number 31, 2018-2019, designating signatory authority for submission of applications and related documentation for USDA. Signatory authority should go to Manager Madrid as the primary and alternate Renee Canton as presented by Tracy Burnett.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 31, 2018-2019. Is there any further discussions, questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, I will ask for roll call.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Deschler.
Yes.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Aye.
Honorable George Zaghetti.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda this morning is item G3, discussion action resolution number 32, 2018-2019, setting the elected officials' compensation. Manager Madrid and Jay Rubin, our city attorney.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll let Jay jump in. This resolution is before you to address elected official salaries, not now, not for anyone here, but for the elected officials in the future. We did some analysis on this. It still, in my opinion, leaves the salaries relatively low. In a lot of other communities, the salaries are directly related and tied to county commission salaries, which are usually close to being double these amounts. So I recommend your approval for a couple of reasons, because it helps a little bit. And it's more compensation of time and effort that should be at least something. It is inconvenient a lot of times. I know from personal experience that you can be out having dinner with your family and have someone just come and sit with you and bring up an issue and invade your privacy. You sacrifice that privacy when you are an elected official. That is worth something. This is a small step. This is a step in the future for which no one at this table will benefit. And I think that needs to be recognized and emphasized. Jay?
Right, and we discussed in previous meetings and we decided to use by resolution, and it's a very brief resolution. Second whereas recites the constitutional provision, and I'll just read that aloud. Whereas Article 4, Section 27 of the New Mexico Constitution provides that no law shall be enacted giving any extra compensation to any public officer, servant, agent, or contractor after services are rendered or contract made. Nor shall the compensation of any officer be increased or diminished during his term of office, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution. So that's what we were making sure we address with this resolution. As City Manager points out, this will only affect subsequent terms. This will not affect your anybody's term you see here today. So we conclude the resolution by saying, now therefore be it resolved that salaries for the city commissioners with terms commencing April 1, 2020 and thereafter, with the first disbursement period for all city commissioners to begin on April 1, 2022, shall be set as follows: commissioners $1,000 per month, mayor $1,200 per month.
Recommend your approval, Mayor and Commissioners.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns?
Do I see the dollar amount on the resolution? Oh, okay.
Commissioner Heschler.
Mr. Rubin, there was some discussion about the additional 200 for the mayor. Is it appropriate just to put that straight in salary, or do we need to address it in some way as a stipend, or how would?
We talked about that, but I think we decided not to include that in the resolution, and I believe we would articulate in the minutes really what the mayor has done and what the expectations were. And if you want to go ahead and articulate those, that's fine, but I think we did cover that in the last meeting pretty significantly.
Okay, well then, I'm happy with it. I just understand that the mayor's job is a little more demanding maybe than a regular commissioner's position in the form of entertaining the public and welcoming people to this community. And I would like to see the mayor have that opportunity to use some of that money in furtherance of the business of this community.
I believe that's been addressed, Commissioner, and I would not recommend changing the language in any form.
Thank you, Commissioner Hester. Do we have any further comments, questions, concerns?
I do have a comment, and I want to thank Manager Madrid, and I'd like to thank Attorney Rubin for working with me on this one, because this is the one I brought up to the table. And I really appreciate the fairness with which this is reading to me, which is the 2022. And it's a new group of people, so I really appreciate your help.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. At this time, I will stand for a motion to approve Resolution Number 32, 2018-2019, setting the elected officials' compensation, as presented by Manager Madrid.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution Number 32, 2018-2019, setting the elected officials' compensation. Madam Clerk, I will ask for a roll call.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Yes.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Aye.
Honorable George Getty.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item on our agenda this morning is item G4, discussion action resolution number 33, 2018-2019, adopting the Sierra County, New Mexico Hazard Mitigation Plan. Mr. Chief Paul Tooley.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Madrid.
I don't know if you have received a copy. Did they get a full copy of the? Let me just read you just a couple of sentences here about what this mitigation plan is. Sierra County, New Mexico, and its participating jurisdictions are vulnerable to a wide range of natural hazards, including flooding, severe storms, drought, and winter storms. Sierra County Hazard Mitigation Plan was developed and updated to guide hazard mitigation activities. The county received a grant to put this together along with the Village of Williamsburg, the City of TRC, Elephant Butte, as well as the municipal school district. So over the last couple of years, we have put together the plan, and we would like to have you guys accept this plan. And the reason is it just allows you were part of the plan. We actually got the grant, did all the work with bulb planning, put it all together. At this point in time, it's been approved by state Homeland Security, and it's also been approved at the federal level through FEMA. The only thing that's left is the adoption, that every entity that was involved just adopt the plan as their plan. So I will stand for any further questions.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns? Renee?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to clarify that the agenda, I believe the agenda says, the resolution in the agenda packet is number 32. The correct number for that resolution is 33. And that's been corrected in your handout you received.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Do we have any further questions, comments, concerns?
Just a really quick question, Mayor. Chief Tooley, when they're talking mitigation, what exactly are they referring to with that particular word?
Well, the mitigation, there's kind of a multifaceted meaning. Mitigation allows you to take this plan and plan for natural disasters, but it also allows you to, if you do have those disasters, this also, with the adoption of the plan, allows you to free up federal money in case you need it for the recovery of that. So the whole mitigation process is kind of the beginning to the end. We identify our threats, we figure out how we're going to deal with those, and then if they do happen, how do we mitigate them, how do we get back on our feet, how do we recover monetarily from them. So the whole process of the mitigation plan is a big umbrella over basically any natural disasters that we have in Sierra County.
So there's not one specific thing that needs to be done. We have flexibility on how to put those plans together based on the disaster.
Yeah, your action plans are your action plans. What the mitigation does, it gives you the ability, and I'll just read you a couple of sections here. There's a hazard risk assessment for the area, capability assessment, mitigation strategies, plan maintenance. So in other words, this is kind of a living document that goes on. We're required from the county side, or at least from the mitigation side, that this plan gets reviewed and updated. I believe it's on a 5-year schedule. So we were able to obtain the grant. It was a matching grant through my office to allow us to get all the entities together as a committee, identify these, put it all together, and basically have a working plan for any natural disasters.
Thank you, Mr. Julie. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner.
Okay, I spent some time going through this, and like you said, this is kind of a prerequisite, something we have to have in order to apply for federal funds. All right, and that being said, to me, this looks like something that, my apologies in advance for what I'm going to say, but this looks like something that could have been put together by some FEMA bureaucrat sitting in Washington who's never been west of the Appalachian, did all of their research over the internet or by looking at records, and plug that information into a formula that was presented to them. The amount of repetition and redundancy in this report reflects that very strongly.
I agree with you 100% on that, because there is plenty of regulations that we had to follow throughout this plan.
I know that's where this is coming from, and okay. First of all, again, just looking through, I found plenty of typos of the kind that you get when you hastily cut and paste things together, extra words included in sentences and stuff. I found there's one table in here, talks about information about the communities, and the numbers for Williamsburg and TRC are identical. It looks like somebody goofed up over there. There are logical inconsistencies, like going down to the winter storm area. It says on the average we can expect 1 or 2 days with more than an inch of snow a year, but at the same time we can expect to experience 4 winter storms every year. That makes no sense. This is the kind of stuff you get from averaging out historical data and relying completely on historical data. There's nothing original in here, nothing that shows any original thought or ideas. Even the recommendations at the bottom of the report look like they were pulled off of a list. And I know this is all based on federal requirements, and this is how you have to do it. And outside of having this documentation in place so we can apply for federal funds in case of a disaster, I don't think this actually gives us anything substantial to work with.
And it probably doesn't give you anything that we don't already know. And that's,
Exactly.
to me, this is more of, this is kind of the baseline that the feds require in order for us to be able to get those federal funds. So,
Right.
yes, there was many hoops that we jumped through at the state level as well as the federal level to make sure that we could get the plan approved. We can have this document, put anything we want in there, and then if they don't approve it, then they don't approve it. So,
I understand.
we spent many years trying to get the hoops jumped through in this, Mr.
Yeah,
Gazzetti.
I understand exactly where I've worked with the federal government for my entire career, so I know where these things come from. But I want to make it clear that this is obvious, this is just a federal requirement that we have to have, and it really doesn't address any specific problems. We talked about flooding. Our downtown flooding here on Broadway is probably the most significant issue that this municipality has. But all we have is just a couple generic statements about flash flooding or flooding.
Right. And I think part of this may roll into, Mr. Zaghetti, into your local action plans that you would put together. So, you know, this just kind of kicks off the idea that this is the big framework that we must work under and everything else comes after that.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand.
Thank you, Commissioner Zaghetti. Any further questions, comments, concerns? Manager Madrid?
Recommend your approval, Mayor.
Thank you. I stand for a motion to approve resolution number 33, 2018-2019, adopting the Sierra County, New Mexico Hazard Mitigation Plan as presented by Paul Tully, Chief, Police.
I got it
It says
wrong.
Police Chief, but I
He's
know
sitting
it's
over there.
Police Chief and Emergency Services Coordinator, Fire Chief.
I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Mr. Tully, is this the Pre-Disaster Hazard Mitigation Act of 2010? Is this the Hazard Mitigation Act of 2000? And I love Commissioner Sergetti's comments because it does look like a cut and paste, and it's really kind of sad that we have no choice but to accept something like this in order to
Now-
get the federal funding. Is that correct?
Correct. Now, there is as far as some typos and stuff, we have those original documents that if he'll get me that information, we will make those changes. We can make those small changes to this if there's typos to it. When we get down to the actual data that has been generated, that has been accepted, we have to be careful with that. But we'll work with Bo Planning on that if there's anything major. I noticed there was one concern that I kept bringing back up for quite a few months. We had the word Oklahoma in there about 2 or 3 times, so we had to make sure that we got that out. So a lot of this was put together from the standpoint of what our plan was before, and if you'll notice on the very first page, the update to the 2011. So this was the next step for that. So in another 5 to 7 years, we're going to have another plan that we'll be putting together as well. So there are some minor things that can be tweaked in this, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, I'll stand for a motion.
Well, with everything I've said, I move to approve resolution number 33, 2018-2019, adopting the Sierra County, New Mexico Hazard Mitigation Plan as presented by Paul Tooley, Emergency Services Coordinator.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 33, 2018-2019. Is there any further questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none.
I just have one more comment, and that is I would like Commissioner Zaghetti to provide his edits to Mr. Tooley so that we can clean up the document a little bit and have the document that we want.
Yeah, the ones that we can. I'm not saying we can do them all, but at least present those. I'd appreciate that.
I can get that to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Heschler. Are there any further discussions?
Is that an amended motion?
If it needs to be, yes, it is.
I think you might be a little careful there
Just not
as we
amend it?
add, well, if you're accepting the plan, I
We'll
think
just
we
take the
can
plan.
see if we can. I can't guarantee that we can make those. So I think if you just approve it, then we will fold those in to see if we can make those changes.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Thank you. Hearing no further questions, comments, or concerns, Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Yes.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Aye.
Honorable George Seghetti.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda this morning is item H, unfinished business. H1, discussion action approval of tower structure lease agreement with Gravity Pad Towers LLC. Tracy Burnett, grant projects coordinator and zoning official this time.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, Manager Madrid. So we first presented this lease to you on February 27th, and at that time, Commission directed us to go back and have some meetings and address some of the concerns that you had within the lease. We have met both internally as well as with our Chief of Police and our Fire Chief, as well as meeting with Sean Milks from Gravity Pad, and I think that we have made the changes as requested within the lease. At this time, I'll reference Jay so he can get more into detail on those changes, and we do also have Sean Milks with Gravity Pad here as well.
Yes, there are two changes. The first change concerns paragraph 8 interference. And there is a sentence that already stated that the tenant warrants that its use of premises will not interfere with the existing radio frequency uses on the property or other radio frequency uses that the city determines is necessary. We went a step further, and we also included, after we saying determines that obviously frequency uses that the city determines is necessary, which may include additional frequencies that the city desires to add in the interest of public safety. The city also retains the right to take any necessary action to protect all frequencies and to ensure safe and efficient operations. So this gives the city a lot of discretion to decide what we need to do in order to protect our current frequencies, to add additional frequencies that we deem are necessary in the interest of public safety. Paragraph 12, when we brought this to you before, it did not have a satisfactory vision that allows access. Or not, I should rephrase that. It didn't really have a provision in there that we could deny access in the event of an emergency situation. So we have taken care of that. In the old paragraph 12, we struck the language that indicated that if we denied access, that we would be looking at a default provision and even a penalty provision. And we've added a sentence that reads, the city does have the right to deny access to address an emergency or public safety situation and to take discretionary action to protect the city. So it's a fairly broad paragraph that does give us the discretion to take whatever action we feel is necessary in order to protect the city and public safety. And I know Mr. Milcher in the audience, and I sent these changes to you, and I understand that you're okay with these changes as I understand it. So that's what I have.
And Mr. Tooley, could I get you to come up and explain to us to the noise floor that we've been requesting and what you feel about this and how you feel and what your comments are?
Yeah, currently what's up there on Water Tank Hill is is 100% in that area by the water tank is all public safety frequencies there. So what I had Advanced Communications do is come up and do a noise floor level for us so that we knew our baseline that all of our current radios work. This is the noise. When we put everything together in one section up there, it's like having a bunch of radios on different frequencies that you're listening to at one time. And the more you put them all together, the more noise it makes, the higher your level has to be in order to talk to just your frequency. So we set a baseline on February the 26th as to what that noise floor is. Then I had Advanced Communications. I worked with them since they are currently the contract engineers, communication engineers for SCRTA, who is the regional dispatch authority that all the governing entities pay into. We came up with, and I kind of presented a little addendum A that I would like to see in this contract, just some procedures that would be done so that any new equipment that goes on there, if it goes on, we need to make sure that it doesn't interfere with any of the public safety frequencies that are up there. So we have some kind of procedure in place to protect that, so we just don't start turning on a bunch of equipment and then everybody goes down. So I just wanted to make sure that we had those in play.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley.
Well, let me ask about that, Mr. Tilley. The reason why I had that last sentence on paragraph 8, I was trying to be as broad as possible. I said the city also retains the right to take any necessary action to protect all frequencies and to ensure safe and efficient operations. Is that?
I think what this does, Mr. Rubin, is this puts the actual procedures in play. So in other words, it's kind of like saying these are like the communication building inspectors. We want them to give us what they're going to be doing up there. What frequencies are you going to put? We're going to need to, before you turn it on, let's do another noise floor, make sure nothing's changed. We turn your equipment on, we do another noise floor, then we check to see if you're interfering with anything. So this becomes more of a procedural than it does. We know it's in the contract, but we don't have any way of, how do we enforce that? If we don't have some kind of procedures in play as to how we're going to protect, because right now what's up there is strictly public safety, 24/7, 365 days a year. So we just want to make sure we don't mind somebody going up there. We just got to make sure we protect what we're currently doing.
Any questions, comments, concerns, Mayor Pro Tem?
And Sean, you might pipe in here if we need you. I spent some time with the fire chief yesterday, and I appreciate the changes to this contract. And we did, at the last meeting, throw this out because we needed our fire chief to be able to read this contract and give us his approval. And I appreciate the fact that he did this noise floor, because it does give us something to work on. It's not going to be just random, and we don't want to randomly just call you up and say, okay, we're the city, we want to shut you all off now.
Sure.
I like the idea of adding the addendum that has been put together by Advanced Communication, is it, Mr. Tooley?
Yes, my office, SCRTA, the regional dispatch, and Advanced, who is the current engineer for the team.
So this is our emergency outfit that's saying this is a procedure that would make it very simple for the city and or your outfit to realize that if we did come up with a big issue, we have a mechanism to say we have to stop something. And we don't want to do that. That's going to leave without any real concise method of configuration or study or science or something like that.
Sure.
So I believe, my personal feeling is, having talked to the fire chief and knowing how detailed this particular person is, that it's not only a protection for the city, but it's also a protection for your company. And I would like to suggest to this commission that we add this proposed addendum into the contract, and there was some wording, if you're okay with it.
Well, I would like to say one thing.
Yeah, well, let me just finish my thought.
Okay.
To put C addendum A for procedures on how to test the equipment is basically what we're the fire chief has put together here for us. And so I do want to hear your comments, and hopefully you've had a chance to read this addendum information.
No.
You haven't?
No.
No, I think the email that I forwarded to you back after we had our previous meeting was the March 7th email we received from Dennis Ewing.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Cliff's report, Cliff Barber, Advanced Communications.
Not unless you did the spectrum
Okay.
calculation as well.
I can go look at my copy. I don't know if you brought it.
It's okay.
That's what we're referring to.
I do want to, sure, but I would like to say, this is already taken care of by the FCC. So noise floor, interfering with radios, they handle that at a federal level. In 23 years of building sites in New Mexico, we've never had an issue. AT&T's at 1900 megahertz, and Verizon's at around 900. They have different spectrums. They're not even remotely close to anything that the city would be utilizing if they go through the proper channels. And so I understand the concern. There isn't a concern. If the fire department or someone is interfering with the carriers, then in turn they're getting interfered with, and obviously no one wants to interfere with each other. But the FCC spectrum clearly outlines that the carriers that are going up there, even future carriers, T-Mobile, Sprint, are on completely different spectrums and do not interfere so that this doesn't happen. This is the first time I've ever even heard of a noise floor. I didn't even know what it was. I've been in the industry since 1997.
I appreciate that comment, and I'm going to turn to Commissioner Seghetti. You know, I looked at the FCC rules several years ago because we had an issue here, and I found some anomalies in all of their writings, just like our Mitigation Act. And I appreciate that the FCC has rules and regulations. My belief is this particular addendum is simple. It's just a procedure, and it's for the city's protection because of the broad verbiage in this lease, that we're not just randomly going up there and saying, we don't like the look of this any longer, so we're going to cut the contract or something like that. That there's a real specific way that the city's going to have to address you. And I think that there's protection on both sides.
I'm okay with it. I'm that confident that it's not going to become an issue. So if you feel more confident, Ms. Clark, that it's in there, I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm actually talking with the fire chief right now as we speak. I can see his face. But this is something that's really important to him, and because, you know, our comment, the meeting last week when you weren't here, and I'm sorry that you weren't.
Sure.
But it was unanimous that we were all very, very concerned about, first, being able to take care of our emergency issues.
Sure. I mean, the whole point of AT&T and Verizon, especially AT&T with FirstNet, is to help the first responders. So to have interference on their existing radios would defeat that purpose entirely. So we're all trying to work towards the same goal, and I think it'll be fine.
We get it. We get it. It's just, I like my fire chief.
Yeah.
Are there any?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I also want to go back to a couple of points from the last meeting. And the first was the issue about the third and fourth tenants on the that are allowed under this lease. And I don't know if we got there was a lot of hesitance, I believe, from the commission on having that in the lease. Is that still an issue with the commission? Is it something we need to discuss, or can we leave it as it is?
Commissioner Seghetti, I was the one that brought that up, so I'm going to answer that question. I believe that this noise floor addendum will help address whether the third and fourth can actually go up on that tower.
Okay.
And so that's kind of an indirect way of saying if it works, great. If it doesn't work, then then the third and fourth don't go up. Is that, am I reading correctly that thought?
Yeah, absolutely, and as a second measure, we have to have the city's consent for any new carrier going up there. Furthermore, they have to go through planning and zoning as well. So if there was an issue, you absolutely control, who goes up there and who doesn't. So there's quite a bit.
Attorney Rubin, do you agree with that?
I don't think, Bob, if you're keep putting it in, Mr. Mills, we can do it.
No, I'm talking about the third and fourth
The
sentence.
third and fourth.
No, I meant,
They had that contract.
I was asking Mr. Mills, this is something you wanted in there, was a third and fourth, and the city agreed this is something we went for from a financial standpoint.
But we also had a discussion that we may not want the third and fourth because we initially wanted the AT&T and Verizon. But if, as long as it doesn't interfere with the noise ordinance, if these people are taking care of our tower, then.
Okay. When we discussed it the last meeting, I think you raised that concern, but I think we also decided it was in our best interest that actually if we had the flexibility to have more carriers, as long as it would not adversely affect our current operations. So I think that's our conclusion we drew. So I'm sorry to answer your question, I think we're okay with that.
That's where we're at with the
Okay,
agenda.
I was actually looking at something here on this.
I'm sorry, cut you off guard.
Something else that kind of I'm gonna bring up in a moment. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I have one other point. The small paragraph 14B, the tenant shall maintain the structural integrity of the water tank and tower at all times. And Sean, I just want to make sure that you and we all understand that to mean the same thing, okay? So, and I just want your
Absolutely.
statements on that.
Yes, we have structural engineers as carriers start to come on the tank. They will provide a structural analysis of the situation. I have requested a few weeks ago for some documentation on the tank from, I believe, 1949. I don't recall who I spoke to, someone that was overseeing it, but he never got that information to me. But I'll work with you. It's fine. I like one other further topic, not related to the contract per se, but the tank is painted, and we want to keep the antennas hidden as much as possible. That's why we're not going above the roof. And so I would like to see if we could have some sort of local painters, because there's so much talent here in Tier C, to maybe bid on painting Verizon, AT&T's antennas so that it matches what is up there currently. And so we don't have to put anything necessarily, on the agenda or whatnot, but maybe reach out to the community to see if we get a good response.
Thank you.
I really apologize for the Commissioner. Let me say what I was looking at when you asked the question a moment ago, but I have my attention diverted for a moment. Because actually I was thinking, Commissioner Clark, about your adding this additional language for the addendum, that would be another exhibit. And actually, here's what just went through my mind. The exhibit 1 that we have is already attached. That's the description of property and premises. Here's what just caught my eye. I just thought about this, while we're sitting here. On paragraph 10, let's turn it up for just a moment. We made a reference there to this adjournment agreement, which is Exhibit 2, and it occurred to me that we told Verizon that we would not really address that until actually we got to this point. So I was just trying to think of really how to grapple with that, Mr. Mills, because I know we have it in the agreement, but actually it's not attached to this contract.
Yeah, you're referring to Verizon's agreement that they want to go after the fact, in the event that council doesn't approve the gravity pad lease, correct?
Let me just show you, in fact, just refresh your memory. If I can, Mr. Mills, let me just, it's this sentence here, and let me just read this aloud. So actually, paragraph 10B, letter Roman numeral B, if the property is or becomes encumbered by a deemed secured debt, mortgage or other security interest, then landlord shall provide property to tenant a mutually agreeable subordination, non-disturbance, and terminate agreement executed by landlord and the holder of such security interest in the form attached here to Exhibit 2. It's not attached here today, so I was thinking about it. I think we agreed we were going to address this first before we got the insurance agreement, but now I'm realizing that this lease is expected us to approve that before we approve this lease.
Yeah, that's strange. I'm okay with attaching it, from our standpoint, we're okay with that.
Yeah, but the problem is the commission hasn't seen it though.
Yeah. Okay.
What if we deleted that for the time being? Do we need to
Then
have
could we
it?
pull
You know,
it?
we can delete it and then add it as an addendum after this is fully executed.
Addendum B?
Sure, or,
I have a problem that you haven't seen
Just
the
pull it.
agreement. I
No, that's-
apologize, I just noticed this, you know, I
That was a
didn't
good
think
find.
about this, I just noticed this, and that's what I happened to be looking at when you asked me your question, Mr. Clark, a moment ago, that there's an exhibit here that it's not attached.
So what portion are we looking at
What are
deleting
we
then?
gonna pull?
just read.
I'm looking at paragraph 10B. And I think we got rid of just that last parentheses B. I think we can still go through the rest, couldn't we?
Absolutely.
Right.
Number 5, you mean?
Yes, it's Roman, yes, it's, letter B, it's Roman numeral 5.
And then we'll just put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
Right, and that's what I told Amy McKenzie from Verizon, that's how we would have to handle it, we'd have to do this lease first, and then do the Verizon
Yeah,
separate agreement, but now I'm realizing, wait a minute, this isn't
Yeah.
put in there, so.
I think they would be fine with that, and we
Are you good with that?
Absolutely.
So you're gonna work with our fire chief on his addendum, and you're gonna work with Verizon on their Exhibit 2.
Any further questions, comments, concerns? Manager Madrid.
Mayor, you know, I ultimately recommend your approval on this item. But this discussion started way before I got here. And I want you all to know that, you know, I think that it wasn't done efficiently. And I think that the issues were addressed backwards. And I think we need to get better at that, and we will. So that's the only statement I want to make.
Thank you.
Manager, I think that the problem was that Verizon came in first, and we wanted AT&T also. And because of that, it did end up backwards, and your comment is absolutely correct. It's taken a lot longer than it should have taken.
Yeah, and because it has, I need to ask council if we can, you know, push out a few months, the payment of the 30,000, to catch up, because we didn't anticipate all of this, delay. We thought this was gonna be done last year. And so, if you're okay with, you know, delaying that, the
How
first
far do you
payment.
need?
Probably 2 or 3 months. That'll allow the carriers to, and us to get through all of this minutia with all the addendums and amendments and stuff.
Mayor, Commissioners, that's, we did not budget that this year anyway. Won't be an issue.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Commissioner Clark, what was that language you recited language about the addendum? Let me just write that in.
It's, I'll let you look at it. This is written by the fire chief.
The addendum, so is it amendment 2 today?
We had Exhibit A, we had Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2.
Well, we're not working at Exhibit 2 for now. Okay, so let's do that 2. So I guess the proposition, let me just read this. So the proposition would be we could approve the lease subject to the following few changes. At the end of paragraph 8A, we would add a phrase that says, see addendum 2 attached for procedures for, what's this word?
See addendum A for procedures for adding tenant equipment.
Okay, for adding tenant equipment, and then we would take out paragraph 10, Roman numeral B5.
And we would also add that we're going to give this gravity pad up to 90 days to pay the $30,000. Manager Madrid. You good with that?
Yes.
Well, right now, I thought they pay $30,000 by July 1.
Yeah, we're asking to delay it a couple of months
Oh,
while
not
we get.
July 1.
Yes,
I see.
yes, so.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
So what, okay, so let's, you want to go then September 1?
That'd be perfect.
That's actually 60 days, 62 days.
Perfect.
All right, okay. So those are the three changes. We can approve these, subject to those three changes.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any further questions, comments, concerns, discussion? I will stand for a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion that we accept the lease with the three changes as noted by Attorney Jay Rubin.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the tower structure lease agreement with Gravity Pad Towers LLC with the three changes as noted by Attorney Rubin and our fire chief and whoever else mentioned, whoever else put their 3 cents in. Is there any further discussion, questions, comments, concerns?
I said that was a very smart motion.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say
Congratulations.
aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Way to go.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
One small point.
Get out of here.
I had referred to this additional exhibit as Exhibit 2, but as you point out to me, it's already came in the email as Addendum A, so I'll refer to it as Addendum A instead of Exhibit 2.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right, thank you all. All right, we're down to the final wire of this meeting. Next item on our agenda is I report. City Manager, you have a report at this time.
I have a couple of very short items. I'm going to ask Tracy Burnett to step up and give us a little bit of good news on USDA funding.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, you may recall a couple months ago, we approved the contract award to RMCI for our Phase 2B, and that was for the base bid only. It did not include any of the additives because we did not have the funding for those additives. I just wanted to let you know I reached back out to USDA, and with a lot of quick work, which I very much appreciate from our City Manager Madrid, we received additional funding, and we will now be including all of the additives except for two very small ones. We did receive another $315,000 for loan, and that is in addition to the original $715,000 loan. And we received another $485,600 in grant to add to our $4,515,000 grant that we originally had. So we will essentially be taking care of almost all items on our Phase 2B and lift stations at the wastewater plant.
Nice work,
Nice.
Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. That's one of the reasons I'm glad her office is only a few feet from mine.
That's
I
right.
want her office in my place.
The other thing that, now the other side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is we still have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of things that need to be tightened up. We just saw a prime example of a discussion that should have happened back in September, October. And we can't operate that way. I have policies in my hand that date back to the 90s and the early 2000s. And I'm not going to go through them all, but they need to be updated, and we operate with them on a daily basis. Some of them are personnel policies. So I think we're past the putting out fires part now, and now we're digging through some rubble, finding what we can find. At the same time, trying to keep the good things going. And I'll tell you one thing, on behalf of the staff, of your staff, all of your staff here at City of Truth and Consequences, we may fail in things here and there, but it sure as heck is not because anybody's lazy. we have some of the hardest working employees that I've seen. And the team building that is evolving among the department heads and the employees is really good to see. And I have an advantage being from the outside. What I see is completely objective. So in both arenas, we're doing well, but we do have a long way to go. And I'll keep you updated as to the strengths and weaknesses that I find. We can do it in a more formal way in the future. But if anything, you'll always be notified if there's anything critical, any disasters or anything. That's another one of our weaknesses. I know the chief is squirming in his seat because we don't have a local disaster recovery plan. We need to develop one, and it's got to be something quickly. It can be done quickly. It's flexible. It's defined. Responsibilities are there. Resources can be allocated that fast, and we don't have that, and we need to get it. And I think we need to address some of the recurring hazards, as you mentioned, Commissioner Snigeti, and some of the ones that we've never anticipated before. So I guess my report today is more of what needs to happen than what's happening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Attorney Rubin, do you have a report at this time?
No, I do not, thank you.
Chief Aragon, do you have anything you would like to report at this time?
Nothing other than what Mr. Madrid mentioned.
Thank you.
I'm glad they're working on we need to work on emergency management for our city.
Thank you. Commission reports. Let's start with Commissioner Zaghetti. Do we have a report at this time?
Not really. I did want to mention one thing, and, since we just have that OHV ordinance in place, and this last weekend they had the poker run up at Cedar Cove, and I talked with the chief, and the police did not receive any complaints about OHV traffic on the state roads or private property. I don't know if anything, it was not reported, but we have had no complaints or reports of any issues with that. So I think that's good. There have been a few issues in the past during the poker run, and I think maybe we have communicated our concerns adequately, and hopefully we won't have any problems in the future either.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Commissioner Baca.
Nothing at all.
Commissioner Clark. Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
You tell me whatever you want. A special thanks to the PD department. A lot of times we don't see what they do, but they're pretty remarkable. And I want to thank you, Chief, specifically. Manager, I'm really happy to hear that fires are gone out. But we do need to take a look at old policies, and we have to take a look at probably some old resolutions and statutes. And it's going to be a laborious chore. But I thank you for putting your attention to that, because it's something that the mayor and I have actually talked about before. And so I like mind readers, and I'm glad you took the responsibility. That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Hessler.
No report.
Thank you. And the only report I have is, once again, I would like to congratulate our 2019 3A champion basketball players. I'm very, very proud. I'm very proud also of our community. We had a great homecoming parade for them, led by law enforcement, EMS, fire, community. I mean, we had one of the biggest outpours of community support, and from just listening to people, it was probably one of the biggest parades that Truth or Consequences has ever had. And so again, congratulations, and we're very, very, very proud of you. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is item J, executive session. J1, sale, acquisition, or disposal of real property. various city properties pursuant to 1015-1H8, and J2 pending litigation, Ashbaugh versus City pursuant to 1015-1H7. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Eschler.
Yes.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Aye.
Honorable George Spaghetti.
Motion carries. Do we need a few minutes? We'll take a few minute break and then we will go into executive session. To J1, executive session, sale, acquisition, or disposal of real property, various city properties pursuant to 1015-1H8, and J2, pending litigation, Ashbaugh versus City pursuant to 1015-1H7, was discussed and no action was taken. I stand for any motions.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. That motion is that this commission give Manager Morris Madrid the authority to settle the case with Ashbaugh.
Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a motion and a second that we give, authorize, or give permission to Manager Madrid to settle the case with Ashbaugh versus City. Is there any further discussion, questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all. I have a motion. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting at 11:10?
So moved.
11:10 a.m. We
That's
are
why they have to
adjourned.
negotiate with you, you know that?